Good evening. I'd like to call our board meeting to order and ask our treasurer to call the roll.
President Baker?
Present.
Mr. Brown? Here. Vice President Cole?
Present.
Ms. Gibbs? Ms. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Peretti?
Here.
Ms. Reyes?
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask Chief Academic Officer Alicia Gillison to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, ma'am. Welcome, and thank you all for joining us this evening. As you probably noted on our agenda, we're going to recess into executive session before we hear from the superintendent, treasurer, and internal auditor, and before we vote on the business before us this evening. We're going to hold off on approving our agenda until after our first executive session. I thank you in advance for your patience. We hope to return quickly from the first executive session, and I'll ask the Vice President to offer a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is recommended that the Board of Education recess into executive session per Section 121.22 G4 Ohio Revised Code to prepare for, conduct, or review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
President Baker? Yes. Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. The board will now recess into executive session. We'll return just as quickly as possible. Thank you. All right, the chair will now entertain a motion that we adjourn from executive session.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson? Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
President Baker?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. All right, thank you for your patience while we were in executive session. And we will now work to adopt our agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening? Yes, Board Member Reyes.
Yes, President Baker, I'd like to make an amendment to add our resolution for the agreement with the Columbus School Employees Association, Ohio Association of Public School Employees, AFSCME Local 4 AFL-CIO.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
So moved.
Okay. Any other changes, amendments to the agenda?
Just so everyone knows, we'll be adding that as Section 17 on the agenda, and that will fall within the consent agenda, and then Sections 17, 18, and 19 will be renumbered accordingly.
Very good. So we have a motion before us to adopt the agenda as amended. Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. All right, public comment. I do not believe we have any speakers this evening. We do not. Let's move then on to our superintendent report. Mr. Superintendent, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board. I was recently reminded of a saying, the universe doesn't give you what you ask for with your thoughts, it gives you what you demand for with your actions. So said more simply, actions speak louder than words. And I believe that our district and our students are always better served when we have active participation at every level and in every effort. For instance, the dedicated actions by so many of our quality teachers, staff mentors, and community partners around helping more of our students cross the stage at graduation is producing measurable results. The new numbers on our four-year graduation rate were just recently reported by the Ohio Department of Education and show an increase of 4 percentage points between 2015 and 2016. So we've jumped from 74.1% to 78%. And remember, those numbers are always a year behind, and they just look at the four-year cohort. So students that entered as freshmen and those that graduated at the end of their 12th grade year. If you look at our most most recent graduating class, this past year, 2017, there were more than 2,300 graduates in all, which was yet another increase of over 2% from the year before. That means our senior success rate, or the percentage of students that started the year in 12th grade, so they began last year with us and finished last year with us, earning a diploma, rose to 84.99%. So we're at 85% in our senior success rate. So make no mistake, this district is committed to seeing those numbers rise even higher, and we definitely know the pathway to get there requires that action we spoke of. I personally appreciate the active support shown by so many individuals and organizers who attended the Columbus Metropolitan Club at the end of last month to hear more about our successful actions, from increases in access to high-quality pre-K and impressive advances on third-grade reading, to the specializations in our career tech programs and record-breaking college scholarship totals for our high school seniors. I believe the audience walked away with a better sense of how much we have accomplished over these past 4 years. And thank you to the board members who were in attendance. Others that couldn't attend were actively representing the district with our minority business partners at the Ohio MBE event. So I hope you were able to share how our operations team has taken action to improve our LEDE investments and grow the number of businesses who participate in our program, aimed at supporting locally economically disadvantaged enterprises, which in turn strengthens the local tax base and increases the employment of local residents. Local labor is taking a more active role in providing our students with career opportunities and the ability to learn valuable hands-on skills in high-demand construction jobs. Last week, Mayor Ginther and the city's building construction unions signed the Community Benefits Agreement, a first of its kind in the city's history, which includes a commitment to invest more than $166,000 in our career technical program, including tools, safety kits, and materials for our construction classrooms. The agreement will also provide resources for a mobile construction lab, which will provide hands-on experiences for more than 275 students at Buckeye, Sherwood, and Wedgwood Middle Schools. Students will be able to actively learn about construction trades through project-based lessons on tools, safety, and available career opportunities. The truck and trailer will be equipped with the needed shop tools, such as drills and saws, so that each student will be able to build their own toolbox. This will be a great partnership and will take to a new level our efforts to actively connect students with high-demand job skills right here in their community. Of course, on this day after election, I would be remiss not to mention the active role that many of our high school students took yesterday as part of the Youth at the Booth initiative. What a valuable experience it is to work at a polling location, seeing democracy in action. Voting is perhaps one of the great examples of action speaking louder than words, and I want to personally congratulate our 3 board members who received overwhelming support from our city's voters. And next, I want to encourage more of our families and stakeholders to take a more active role in staying engaged and informed. Download the Columbus City Schools mobile app if you have not done so already. In the palm of your hand will be the power to securely access your students' grades and attendance, be the first to receive school alerts and notification. It's the very first place we post notifications about a snow day. You will have direct access to a 24/7 news feed about your child's school and also our district. You can stay up to date with an easily accessible calendar, get tomorrow's breakfast and lunch menus, receive text alerts on the delayed bus routes, find direct contact information for your child's principal, and access our new Peach Jar e-flyers system, and also connect with other community partners for free services and help. All you need to do is search Columbus City Schools in your mobile app store. Finally, tonight, I want to actively share my admiration for the great work going on at our Columbus Afrocentric Early College. In just a moment, the director of the campus, Dr. Todd Walker, will talk about the next evolution of the program. But let me share how impressed I am with how he and his team are actively working with students and families to create a supportive and successful learning environment that is set to produce great results. With that, let me ask our Chief Academic Officer to begin our discussion and presentation.
Thank you, President Baker and members of the board. CCS, Columbus City Schools, is not only the largest and most diverse urban district in Ohio, we're also diverse in our offering and programmings for our students. We offer programs that appeal to students' academic and artistic growth and development. We also provide opportunity for our gifted and talented students to seek out academic and artistic programming. And with that, I'd like to share that we currently have 5 schools that are identified within the lottery. It's called selective lottery. And those 5 schools are, with the academic focus, would be Eastmore Academy High School and Columbus Alternative High School. Academic focus, I must say that once again. And then when we talk about the artistic, students identified artistically can attend Duxbury Elementary, Arts Impact Middle School, or Fort Hayes Middle School. And those selective criteria, when we talk about on the academic side, a student must be in the 8th grade on trajectory, a positive trajectory for 9th grade. Their entire 7th grade year have a 3.0 or higher. Be identified as gifted and talented in reading, math, science, or social studies, or identified as superior cognitive. And then when we talk about artistic, those students that have been identified gifted in dance, vocal, visual performance, or performing arts. So currently, as of tonight, we have 5 selective lottery schools within Columbus City Schools, and we have Dr. Walker here to share information on a possibility of another school that might enter that realm of selective lottery. At this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Todd Walker, the director of Columbus Afrocentric Early College High School.
Good evening. Thank you, Ms. Gillison, Dr. Good. Greetings, President Baker, Vice President Cole, and members of the Board of Education. I'd like to thank Dr. Good and his executive team for this occasion to share with you. And I'd also like to thank the support system that we have at Columbus Afrocentric Early College, inclusive of my administrative team, the 2 principals, 2 assistant principals, our instructional coaches, and teaching staff, some of whom are here today to support this endeavor. I'm here today to talk with you a little bit about a compelling opportunity. You heard from Ms. Gillison the idea that we currently have 5 schools that have selective admissions, and our proposal is that we add Columbus Afrocentric Early College to that district offering. Our idea is that we give a world-class opportunity to students in Columbus Afrocentric School to earn not only their high school diploma at the end of 12 years, or actually 14 years when you look at Columbus Afrocentric Early College, because we are a pre-K through 12 campus. So students conceivably could be with us for 14 years, and at the end of that time, we would like to build an opportunity so that they are able to earn not only their high school diploma, but also that associate degree of arts or of science. And so our idea is that we have a rigorous curriculum and a focus on college access for students that traditionally may not have had that sort of access to college. Our concept is that we provide opportunity for traditionally underrepresented populations so that they can receive, as I said, their high school diploma and significant college credit, if not that Associate of Arts or Associate of Science. And so our concept is high expectation and high support. We have previously partnered with KnowledgeWorks in our early college endeavors. And KnowledgeWorks is an organization that supports early college initiatives across the nation. And nationally, you can see the results. Students that participate in early college perform at the highest levels in terms of graduation rate, as we heard Dr. Good talking about graduation rate numbers for our district. In particular, students who are of color, students who are from low-income families, those numbers are at an increased rate when students are exposed to an early college learning opportunity. We also see that these results are in Ohio, and so this is not just a national number or demographic, but it also is relevant to us in the state of Ohio. The history in Ohio is that KnowledgeWorks in early college began around 2003. Afrocentric Early College adopted the KnowledgeWorks as well as the early college platform around 2005. So I want to take us on a little bit of a journey before we give you our kind of our formal proposal ask that causes us to look at where we currently are situated, where we've been and where we're going, and then how we think that this opportunity that we have before us today for selective admissions can add to an already strong program. Who's doing similar work like this in the state of Ohio? There are several schools, and I took a tour before taking on the directorship of the campus around the state of Ohio, seeing some of these other schools. And so I had the privilege to see Dayton Early College, Timken Early College, which is in the Canton area, Akron, and a few others as well. And what I discovered is that Canton is actually most similarly situated to the model that we feel would be best suited for Columbus Afrocentric Early College and the work that we feel that we can do there. In Canton, about 65% of their students actually graduate with an associate's degree and the high school diploma. And so our aspiration would be similar to that. We feel like we have the capacity at being similarly situated to achieve at that level. So in terms of the history of the Afrocentric School began in 1993. Officially, the school opened in 1996, and then there was a merger, as I mentioned briefly, between the Afrocentric concept and the early college concept that occurred in 2005. And the Afrocentric School was designed with the idea to empower students with a sense of knowledge and confidence in who they are, and a positive image and self-identity. The school is based off of 7 leadership principles of Ma'at and community values of Nguzo Saba. And so we see those there. Those provide the climate, the culture, and the climate foundation for the school and the work that we do. It's kind of interesting that even employers now are looking not just for academic progress and for academic skills, but they're also looking for soft skills. They want to know what students can bring to the table, not only those technical skills that are the ability to take tests, but also the adaptive skills. And so we feel like those community values of Nguzo Saba, those leadership principles of Ma'at that we teach, enhance that. And so I thought this cartoon was kind of interesting. The person says, hey, I see that you have been successful, but what real world skills do you have? And the person says, well, I can take tests. And so, but we know that being successful is much more than that in the marketplace. You have to be able to work with others. You have to be able to work collectively. You have to be able to think flexibly. And so we see those in the graph there represented next to that, the difference between sometimes what college graduates think they've acquired and what's meaningful to employers and what actually is. So again, the early college implementation was set forth. Our vision at Columbus Afrocentric Early College is high achievement early college for each student as we affirm the positive leadership of African Americans to benefit the global community. Our expectation is that we want a high expectation, high support, accelerated learning environment. We also want to be an extension center for African and African American cultural learning around for the broader Columbus community. Several different approaches to early college, different structures that we could adopt. And our idea is and understanding is that you need to have several of those to work well. We like the idea of having our instructors teaching kids college courses as well as having our students go to Columbus State to take those college courses. That's who we partner with. Also merging with having Columbus State instructors come to Columbus Afrocentric Early College. We feel like that provides the best network of support for our students as we roll them towards a full immersion of a college process or college experience. And so our message is that we are looking for high quality, rigorous instructors. We want students, they don't have to be gifted and talented to be part of our program, but we want hardworking students. And so our focus for selective admissions focuses on those type of students that are willing to work hard, that understand and have an interest in the dual focus of our program, which is both Afrocentric in nature as well as an early college environment that is rigorous. So students should want to learn about the contributions of African and African Americans to our global community, and they should also be interested in attaining a college degree and in doing the work that it takes to attain a college degree while in high school. So just to give you a little bit of information, The current wait list for our 6th through 10th grade, which is what the proposal for selective admissions is looking at, is approximately 540. So there's a demand at Columbus Afrocentric Early College of students that want to be part of our program. And so we have some considerations, things that we look at in terms of how the early college program impacts our curriculum, our programming. But we I think, have a team of folks, our executive leadership in the district, our current staff at the high school that is helping us to think through all of those challenges, and we feel that we're well equipped to meet those things. Selective admissions, we're hoping to initiate and with the approval of the board, and then there's a process to which the state board also would have to approve. But we're hoping to begin in 2018-19, and that would mean 20% set aside for the available seats. And so just to let you know what that would look like, most of our available seats happen in the 9th grade. We usually have about 100 seats that open up in the 9th grade year from 8th to 9th grade, just because of the way that our schools are structured. We have a PK through 8 and then a high school, which is 9 through 12. And so 20% of that would obviously be about 20 kids, but then we also would have for those incoming 6th, 7th, and 8th graders some opportunity to be part of that 20%. So again, it's not all of the lottery is not what's included in selective admissions, but for 20% of the available seats, students can be selected through that process. So that concludes my presentation. I believe there's a few moments for questions, if there are any questions, and I can try to field some of those, and then I will give you back to our fearless superintendent.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and I believe there are several questions. And I believe the first hand I saw was Board Member Brown.
Dr. Walker, thank you. This has been helpful. One of the questions I had as I worked through this, once students are accepted, whether from this selective process or otherwise, is there any difference between what's available to them or how they're dealt with in school?
No. Whether they come in through the line, we were obviously a lottery school, but there'd be no different in the program offerings whatsoever. Be treated exactly the same.
In terms of the college level
Yes,
courses?
in terms of the college level courses, Columbus State has some expectations in terms of what our students have to do to be part of that curriculum. And so our goal is to prepare students in the pre-K through really up to around 6th, 7th grade. We've had some 8th graders actually participate in the early college programming. So the idea is that we're equipping students and preparing them so that they can meet those college expectations to participate. But as long as the student meets those expectations of Columbus State to participate in the coursework, we allow them to participate, and our goal is for them to.
And it doesn't matter whether they came in selectively or
No.
lottery or, okay.
Makes no difference.
Okay. Mr. Peretti?
Columbus Afrocentric Early College, is it 100% lottery?
Yes.
So we have a pre-K option there as well. Is that
Yes.
available to the neighborhood area as well?
It's available. Yes, it is available, but it's all through a lottery process. They go through the same process as kindergarten through 12th grade.
Okay.
But the neighborhood, we don't have a neighborhood catchment, so to speak, like some of the traditional schools do. But students that live in the geographic area surrounding Columbus Afrocentric can participate in that lottery process.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for this outstanding presentation. What type of PD, professional development, will staff continually need to ensure that the curriculum needs are met for our students? Is there capacity there? What do you see moving forward with that?
So that's a good question. Currently we constantly take stock of that. And as I said, we have a dual focus, both the Afrocentric infusion into the curriculum as well as the early college component. What we look for, and I think a few of our teachers that are here tonight actually teach those college courses. So we look for teachers that have master's degrees in those subject areas. And so we have teachers who are qualified in science and English to actually either be facilitated instructors with Columbus State curriculum or to actually be the instructor with that curriculum in the building. And so that is something that we're upfront about and continue to be upfront about when teachers and faculty and staff decide to be a part of our program, that we're looking for folks, particularly this, I'm speaking specifically towards a high school, we're looking for folks that are willing to or either have those credentials to be able to facilitate or help us facilitate some of that curriculum. Some of it, as I said, we're going to have we feel like having a multiplicity of options is best for both for kids and from an allocation standpoint. So we currently do send some of our kids to Columbus State, and then we are teaching about 40 or so of them in-house with our teachers as facilitators. But we're in conversations with Columbus State that in the future we also will have some Columbus State instructors coming to Columbus Afrocentric Early College. And then in terms of the Afrocentric infusion, we're partnering with a group of folks, one of whom is Linda James Meyer. She's a professor of clinical psychology at The Ohio State University. And we're looking now at a model that helps us to infuse pre-K through 12 into the curriculum, because it's really not the curriculum. The Afrocentric perspective is not something else. It's just a perspective that we want to introduce, and it can flow very well with the curriculum that is in sync and in alignment with what the Board of Education, as well as the state of Ohio and the federal government prescribes for students to learn. And so we're engaged in that work now.
Let me take this moment to ask all Afrocentric staff, families, anybody else who's here from Afrocentric to stand up and be recognized. Don't be shy. Thank you very much for being here. I saw the purple and I knew that you were here. All right. Board Member Hudson?
Thank you, President Baker. Dr. Walker, thank you, and thanks for your great work now at Afrocentric. I have a question, is 20% enough? Two things, and second is it possible to do this so that there's a percentage for middle school age students and then for ninth grade? With that large of a waiting list, clearly there's demand, and second 20%, 20 to 30 out of that it just seems small.
So,
I just think if we're shooting for higher ground, let's go there.
Amen. So I think, and I would probably have to defer to Dr. Roush on this, that it's currently part of the state statute that 20% is what you're allowed to do. And now there are some schools who were grandfathered in before that change was made, and some of the early colleges that do more than that. If I'm incorrect, okay.
Good evening, President Baker, to Board Member Hudson. The statute itself does not specify 20%. When we went to the State Board, what it does specify is that the State Board has to grant that waiver if we use any kind of academic, artistic, athletic criteria. I believe that it's 3313.982, I want to say. But what that section does say is that essentially we have to ask for those. We have to ask that waiver from the State Board of Education. We were the first school district, by the way, that actually has asked for that waiver, because when we went to them back in, I believe it was late 14, early 15, they had to really create a process for us to do this. 20% is what we'd asked for before. We thought that for consistency's sake, not only the fact that we were successful there, but also because then it's consistent across the rest of our programs, that it was a good figure for this particular point in time.
I guess I would just say, I would leave it to all of the experts, and I understand consistency, but the numbers seem to say, make it bigger.
Yes, Board Member Reyes?
Thank you, Dr. Walker. So when we were talking about resource allocations to different programs, if we increased the level of education for our teachers and/or also go out and get additional resources from Columbus State as far as educators. Is there an increase in cost or anything that we need to consider as you look at your model?
There is a difference in cost. And so each of those, whether we decide to have Columbus State professors at the high school, there's a cost for that. There's a cost for having CCS teachers facilitated at the high school, which currently that's our predominant mode. The cheapest approach, the most cost-effective approach is to have our Columbus City school teachers facilitating at the high school. Okay, but there's some considerations there, and this is something that I've been working with Cherie Wells, who's our director of secondary curriculum, as well as Tanya McClanahan, who oversees our higher education partnerships. There is a benefit for some of our students with actually going to the campus, those that are socially and emotionally prepared, because that's the part of college, particularly for some of our first students that are underrepresented, that don't have a college capital in their family. Okay, those are the things that are often most challenging for them, and so, but some of our students are prepared for that, and so for them that experience is helpful, and the district, I think, has been very forward-thinking in providing that opportunity, not just for students at Columbus Afrocentric Early College, but around the district. So, my perspective is that a mixed model would be best. As our program grows, the cost there will be a slight cost increase compared to where we are now. That's just being transparent. But I think, obviously we're in the business of education, so our investment in children, I think that's an investment well worth it for our students. They get an opportunity to have not only the high expectation but the high support that comes with our program at Columbus Afrocentric Early College.
If I may, I think the other thing, we're trying to figure out the modeling for understanding how many students that aren't accepted when they apply for selective admissions then leave the district, which would be, a deduct. And so that's also part of the equation. If we're able to keep more students in the schools of their choice, then there's less money flowing out. So we're still trying to figure out how to model that and understand how many students are actually making those decisions.
So my question also comes in the aspect that we looked at Columbus State a lot for resources for education. So I would assume that we're also looking at other universities, other colleges within the area that may give us a better deal on resources. You don't have to, that's not a question, that's a statement. So, so those universities that are out there, they're looking for a great partnership and a great opportunity for some wonderful kids. That would be a great opportunity for them to look into Columbus City Schools. So my second question is, do you have to be a certain ethnicity to attend?
No, and that's actually, the answer is no. But that's a great question, because I think when a lot of people hear, Columbus Afrocentric Early College, that comes about. But no, I mean, as I said, our vision is high achieving early college for each student, and that's no matter what your ethnicity is. But the second part of it is, as we affirm the positive leadership of African Americans to benefit the global community. So our, part of the mission is to make sure that there's awareness about what the positive contributions of Africans and African Americans to our global community have been. And we think that's healthy. We think it's healthy for our district. And I know we're in the 80% in terms of African Americans that are in our district. So most of our students are African American. Not all of them are, though. But we think it's a healthy lens for any student to be aware of what the diverse contributions of all folks, not just one ethnicity, have made to the fabric of our nation. And it strengthens us. That sort of knowledge strengthens all of us when we are aware of those things.
Thank you. We just get asked that question a lot, so I just want to make sure that we asked it.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
Yeah. Two additional questions I had. One, I know that there are other early college high schools in Ohio, and that you looked at a few of those. are there any other Afrocentric high schools in Ohio? And if, I just don't know, and if so, do you exchange information and best practices with them? And if not Ohio, elsewhere?
Good question. Before I present my paperwork to Mr. O'Reilly for my professional development, there is not that I know of in Ohio. I'm sure that there probably are some charter schools. We're quite unique across the nation in that we are a public school. Most Afrocentric schools, when you look nationally, are charter schools. And so even the schools that I'm looking at paying some attention to and visiting, Chicago, Detroit, some of our larger cities, New York, have some long-established Afrocentric schools that I think give us a lens. They're not structurally set up exactly like we are because we're a public entity, which I think has it's a different context. So let's put it that way. But I think we can learn from those schools, and there's probably some things that I think we can add to the conversation as well.
Second question. Understanding that a path to college and career tech are not mutually exclusive, how do we accommodate students in your schools that are also interested in career tech?
So we have that now. We have students that attend Columbus Afrocentric that also go to Fort Hays. If you're at downtown, you're at downtown all day. I mean, that's just how that program is set up. But we do accommodate that. But we feel like you're best when you know what you do. And so we want to be very clear and mission focused on and be excellent at who we are. And so we've worked really hard at clarifying our brand and being very strategic about communicating with clarity and consistency who we are. And so that people know when you come to Columbus Afrocentric, this is what you get. And this is what we offer. And Columbus is fortunate, I think, among most of our Ohio districts to have a number of different program offerings that if you don't find a fit one place, there are a lot of different other places that you can look that could provide that fit for you.
Thank you.
Board Member Gibbs?
Thank you, Dr. Tucker, and thank you for your team for being here, and thank you for the presentation. You brought this to innovation and reform, and it was well received about with the same amount of excitement as I think many of us feel here around the opportunity to actually increase the number of students that are dedicated to the mission of early college. So for that, I think you have well stated the proposal. I don't think, though, there's any apology needed for having the focus or wanting more students that are seeking this program. So if you wanted to speak French, you would want more students in your buildings that wants to speak French. And I think this is along the same lines of ensuring the academic fidelity of the program. And as we have many offerings in this district, our research has shown us not all of them are implemented with fidelity. So I take this proposal as one to increase that and to be more aligned and in focus with the mission of the school. I remember when Bill Moss sat at this very table and insisted that the school move forward and insisted that it move from concept to implementation and that it would grow to a high school. It was a K-5 for many years and it almost got stalled at that process, but both he and Loretta Hurd and many of the community elders and many in the Afrocentric community rallied and came to this board and made sure that we did in fact see it all the way through to a K-12. And so I'm glad to see that it is there and that this program is strong. My one question about the 20% and about the entire proposal is, other than the numbers, what else do you need to ensure the sustainability of this endeavor? What do you need to sustain not just adding the 20 slots or the 20%, what else do you need to sustain the focus on the early college? The Afrocentric part is a whole nother strand, and Dr. Linda James Myers and the Michelle Alexanders of the world can help really fortify that work. But what do you need to sustain the early college portion of this school?
Well, I think the selective admissions is a step in the right direction. I think also to Dr. Good's point, an ongoing conversation about the fiscal aspects of this work is important because the cost structures do change slightly as the numbers increase, and knowing what our capacity is and what we would like to do, and then being able to direct resources appropriately, I think is something that needs to be kept at the forefront of conversations as we grow. And we increased about 220%, from 15 kids that were in early college to 45, and then we have an additional 75 or so freshmen that are going to be taking the Coles course this year. So you're looking at some rapid increase over the course of about 3 years. And so we think we'll be on that pace. Probably, we'll have another large jump next year, and then it'll level off some. We'll still get growth, but it won't be at that pace. So I think making sure that there's some awareness around the financial aspects of the work is important.
My next question is for administration. Around the authorization, how often are these programs up for reauthorization or recertification, or do we get it once and does it just stay authorized, or do we have to go before the state board every so many years?
President Baker to Ms. Gibbs, once the state board grants its authorization, we're good to go, so we don't have to come back every so often. I guess if they requested us to come back and do a presentation, and they may very well ask questions as we come back again, we should be ready for that. But by and large, we're good to go.
Okay, so if we went to the board at 25% and we were granted the 25%, we don't have to go back and ask them again?
President Baker to Ms. Gibbs, if we get 25%, it's at 25%. If we want to shift that at any particular point in time, we would have to then go back. We would be locked in at 25%.
Next question to administration. Do we have the capacity to raise the other 5 schools to the 25% threshold? If we were going to strengthen everybody's program, it's nothing but an ask. All they could say is no. But do we have the capacity, I'm sure, or has the other programs asked about the increase? They probably are at 20 and maybe didn't think more, but since we're going to bring another one on board, have we considered increasing it to 25% to strengthen the fidelity of the other programs in their admissions process?
President Baker to Board Member Gibbs. So the answer is no, we have not considered that because until this evening, we didn't entertain the notion of going beyond a 20% ask. The second part of the answer is yes, we have capacity because the seats are the seats. And so the faculty would be the faculty that we have. In the case of Afrocentric, because of the early college nature of that program, there would be slight cost increases for adjunct faculty, those that were qualified to offer the college credit but are teaching in our schools. And of course, if we are sending students to the college campus, that would be a different fee structure as well. But in the big scheme of things, it's minimal. And again, we would have to look at the return on investment by those students electing to stay in Columbus City Schools because they received their first or second choice in the lottery. So.
Yes, because
Good
when you ride through the community, you see at Gahanna Lincoln, Columbus State has a campus. In Reynoldsburg, Livingston, they have a campus. And so I don't think it would be unreasonable to ride past Afrocentric and have a campus. And to Board Member Reyes' point, Columbus State, Capital, DeVry, Ohio State, I don't care whose banner is out there, but there is already a model for college satellites to be at the other schools. And if we're going to be it's not good enough to just be the biggest. We have to be the best, and we have to be the most competitive and stay on the cutting edge. And that is also providing those facilities and opportunities. So I'm going to blame the 25 cent on Board Member Hudson, and I'm going to say that she started it, but I'll back up her number to say not just 25%. Yeah,
Thank you.
Not just that, but as you consider facilities, as you consider to bringing us up to par with what other Central Ohio offerings are, more and more districts may consider open enrollment. So we're competing against people here, people across the state. So when you ask for everything, ask for it all. And all they can say is yes or no.
We'd like 100% selective admissions.
So President Baker, to Ms. Gibbs, so let me interject here a little bit of, I think the last 52 months has given us some examples of success where we start small and do proof points. And we can always go back to the state board and say, look at the results of this. Look how many more students are staying in Columbus. Look how many more are enrolling in post-secondary options at their campus or going to satellites, as you indicated. So I'm going to suggest that we stay at the 20% at this point, or ask for up to, but begin at 20% so we can begin to demonstrate the success of the program. I think we need to shoot for what we know and what we trust would be successful on that campus, and then scale that as we have evidence that it's working. So that would be my caution. Ultimately, it's the board's decision since it's your resolution, but it would be my recommendation we stick with the 20. The other thing would be, because we've set a precedent in the district of the 20%, if we're going to increase, then we ought to be looking at all of our campuses that have waiting lists, and all of our selective admission campuses do have wait lists. And so if we're going to begin to increase, perhaps we should be putting forward resolutions as well to make increases there, so we're making one stop at the State Board of Education. But I think we've got some great evidence that we'll be able to generate. And to me, that's the obligation of us as the largest district in the state, in the capital city, to demonstrate what other districts can do with that strong evidence.
To your point, Dr. Good, do the all-city lottery schools get together and do they talk and have feedback with you all, and you'll have regular conversation about that, and where would that conversation take place?
It would. That would be I'm sorry to Board Member Gibbs, that would be a conversation that occurs in academic services and also with Tanya Milligan. So she leads those conversations. But again, we need to do some modeling again on the fiscal part of it to demonstrate that as well. But more importantly, on the academic success and the sustainability of those gains that they're making. It's not enough to get them through those college courses while they're in high school. If they want to continue on that college pathway, that they stick with it and matriculate after they leave us. So.
But thank you very much. Thank you for your team. Thank you for the advocacy of Mr. Tennant and all of those volunteers and parents and teachers and everybody that serves the coffee at the football games and the concession stands at basketball. All of your tremendous work.
Thank you. Board Member Hudson?
President Baker, I would just say, I think, and I certainly, again, defer to everybody, but the numbers do seem to support that, and I would just say maybe perhaps innovation and reform could keep an eye on it and work with everyone, and just let's continue to think big.
Very good. Mr. Superintendent?
President Baker, so just a couple of things, and Todd, remind us real quickly, am I remembering correctly, all of your freshmen are enrolled in pre-college?
Yeah, so yeah, the majority of them will be. So the second semester, the majority, we because you do have to pass certain expectations, and part of it is our looking at our actually staffing capacity. But at least about 75 to 80% of our freshmen in the spring semester will be taking the Coles 1100 class, which is basically the college introduction study skills course that most folks take their freshman year when they go to college.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for that. Just a couple other things too. When I said the cost wouldn't be real different, I need to go back and say that if more students are enrolling in the International Baccalaureate program as a result of increasing, there is a cost there, and that is a little bit more significant actually than the adjunct faculty costs. But again, absorbable if we're keeping those students here versus they're taking other accelerated programs outside the district. A couple other things real quickly. All of the pre-K seats are in fact lottery at Afrocentric. So Todd was correct in saying that. And I want to clarify too that 77% of our population by federal standards is non-white. 77% is not African American. Only 54% of our student population is African American. And so then you have multiracial, you have Hispanic, you have Asian, Pacific Islander, and others. But you're correct, and 77% is non-white by federal standards. But I didn't want you to think that they're all African. We're much more multicultural than just two ethnicities in our district, and that's what makes Columbus such a wonderful place.
Thank you. Board Member Reyes?
Dr. Good, a quick question. So, is there funding or is there possibility to make up some of the funding through financial aid resources? So when a student goes to college, and if you fit, which many of our students do, I mean, that's the way I made it to college, through Pell Grants, Ohio structural grants, scholarships. Is there an opportunity for us to, without impacting the child, obviously, for us to be able to get some of those dollars to utilize to get our kids to college and universities?
So to Board Member Reyes, I'll have to get back with the answer to that. I'm not exactly certain. Remember the state went through that process of doing College Credit Plus, so they've actually adjusted tuition. But again, districts are footing that bill. That comes out of our coffers, not out of the universities. In fact, the textbooks also do. There's some interesting legislation moving forward now that'll make some adjustments to that. But relative to the financial aid question, I don't know, Alicia, if we can answer that yet or if we need to do some research.
I just said look at it because, I mean, basically, we're paying for what the majority of our kids would qualify for if they graduated from high school and went on their own. So somewhere I would think that we would be able to get that back so that our kids could get more access to education.
President Baker, to Ramona Reyes' question, we will get back with you because that's going to take a little more investigation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And keep in mind, we won't be voting on this evening, so when this does come back before us for a vote, we'll have opportunity to ask additional questions. Board Member Peretti, did you have one last question?
Yeah, just wanted to just go back to the pre-K piece. Do we have other pre-K site locations in this area of town? And are we seeing our pre-K slots being, even though it is lottery, are they drawing from the neighborhood?
President Baker to Board Member Peretti, why don't I send to the board the actual breakdown of that so we can do the live-in and attend charts as well as demonstrate how many are lottery in which settings and so on. So it changes almost on a daily basis as well, so be aware of that. We are serving about a third of the district or the city's 4-year-olds at this point in high quality, 5-star, step up to quality pre-K early experiences. So, and thanks to the partnership with the city. And I will take credit for naming Dr. Walker as the director of the Columbus Afrocentric Early. One of the good decisions I made 2 years ago, and it was just about this time, wasn't it? We invited you to think about it and gave you winter break to decide or find employment in another district. No, it was a good thing.
Thanksgiving was fun that year. Thank you, Dr. Good.
I think the last question I have then, is there a deadline by which we need to have this to the state for their consideration? Dr. Rausch?
President Baker, the deadline is more so our internal deadlines for when we need to get to the state if we're going to have this go into effect for the next school year. We really need to probably have this under consideration next week so that we can try to get it under the state board, next board meeting. Thank you for clarifying, Dr. Stanford, for the next board meeting because we'll want to get to the state board meeting. Last time they took 2 hearings. They basically we did a presentation in front of one of the committees. Then the state superintendent of public instruction made a recommendation to the full board, and they took that the following meeting. So if we can get on the December agenda for the presentation and then do our presentation at the December meeting, hopefully then the state superintendent will make a similar recommendation as the previous state superintendent did. That would go onto the January agenda. While they don't have those dates out yet, typically it's the second Monday and Tuesday of the month, so that'd be about January 9th of next year. Of 2018, that puts us right against the cusp of about where we typically do selective admissions deadlines. Is that correct? I'm looking at my friends in school choice. Yes. So anything beyond that, we really will be putting ourselves at a bit of a pinch from our own process standpoint to try to run, because I know that they've got their deadlines and timelines, and it's a well-oiled machine. I don't think we want to throw a wrench into that. So I think we just need to be cognizant and keep moving forward.
Okay, so we'll look to put this on the agenda then for the next meeting. Very good. If there are no further questions from my colleagues or the administration, one more. Board Member Gibbs.
And then when you bring it back, you'll have the criteria. We'll discuss, and you'll have the criteria for selective admission when we approve it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I think I believe you had a summary of it before you, but we can be as detailed as we need to be.
Dr. Walker, thank you very much.
Thank you, Board President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the Board of Education, Dr. Good, for your time. I'll be better next time about saying the appropriate nomenclature of your names before my question. Have a wonderful evening.
2 weeks to practice is plenty. Thank you all for being here from Afrocentric tonight. Thank you very much. Mr. Superintendent, have you anything further to report to the board this evening?
I do not. Thank you, President Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. If there are no further questions on the superintendent's report, we'll move on then to the internal auditor. Have you anything to share with the board this evening, Madam Internal Auditor?
Thank you, President Baker. I do not have a report this evening.
Thank you very much. And let's move then on to our treasurer. Mr. Treasurer, have you anything to share with the board this evening?
Yes, I do. Thank you, President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board. I would like to share a brief update with the board regarding the recent spotlight that was placed on our district's payroll system. As you were made aware, and as was shared in an email to all district staff, 25 employees experienced an unexpected issue with their paychecks this past payday, Friday, November 3rd. Those employees reported an unauthorized change to their bank account information for direct deposit. Because of our industry standard safety protocols and payroll, no funds were lost or diverted. In short, our safety procedures worked. However, because we take these data security matters very seriously, we have taken several additional precautionary steps to further protect our internal information systems. First, my payroll and controller teams, along with information technology and our vendor Tyler Technologies, immediately began to inspect and probe how this incident occurred. That examination is ongoing, and we have included the internal auditor, her team, and our legal counsel in this effort. Second, we limited the ability of employees to change direct deposit information online, instead requiring those changes to be completed by paper form only. And third, as a sweeping precautionary measure, we initiated a forced reset on employee passwords. We truly acted quickly and thoroughly, and most importantly, prevented any loss of funds for our employees or the district. So at this time, our teams believe it is best not to go into any further details about the incident or our ongoing efforts, and will not be able to take or make further comment tonight. But please know that we are taking care of our employees, and we are working diligently on this matter. That concludes my comments, President Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. I appreciate that update, and I appreciate knowing also that the Office of Internal Audit has been kept in the loop, and we'll look forward to hearing more after the examination is concluded. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Nothing else from the treasurer? Then, thank you, sir. All right, now we're going to have a special presentation, an update on our superintendent search. And so we have staff here from Hazard Young Atia, led by Dr. Alan Lease. And I would like for you to go ahead and provide your update to us. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, President Baker, Vice President Cole, and members of the board. It's great to be back with you. And I want to begin by noting that there's only 2 members of your Hazard Young and Atia search team here tonight. Dr. Estrop is the other member of our team, and he had, I guess, the good fortune to be elected as a commissioner in Springfield, Ohio last night. And when we talked to him a couple hours ago, he sounded just awful, cold and flu symptoms, etc. So that's my backhanded way of congratulating the board members who were reelected yesterday, and saying also I'm very glad to see you're all healthy. So anyway, we're going to do 3 things tonight. We're going to talk about the leadership profile, which is a summary, and that's one of the documents that you have, which is sort of a high-level summary of what we discovered in all the meetings, focus groups, et cetera, that we had with Columbus folks. Secondly, we're going to review the survey report. And thirdly, that's all pointing us to the third document, which is the 1-page list of desired characteristics. That's what's really important. It doesn't have to be in our opinion, doesn't have to be formally adopted by you as a board, but we want to make sure we're on the right wavelength, because we want to use that one-page list of desired characteristics as sort of the guiding light for the remainder of the search process. We want to use that as we work with you and as you think about and we help you write questions, both questions that we do in screening and questions you do in the interview process. And so, and we want to use that as, in effect, an advertisement, if you will, to potential candidates. If they don't feel that they can do well with these desired characteristics, then it's really not in their interest or our interest for them to apply. And we try to be really upfront about that, and that's why we try to spend so much time talking about the profile, the characteristics, et cetera. I want to begin by just pointing out in the first page of the leadership profile, I think something that's absolutely wonderful news and actually extremely exciting. We've had an opportunity. I've worked now on searches for almost 6 years. This is an absolutely tremendous response. We basically had almost 2,000 points of input, 1,668 survey responses, which just is a great testament, I think, to how much your teachers, your staff, your families, your community care about getting this right and doing the right thing for the school system. And then between the individual interviews and the small group meetings and the arranged sessions with administrators and whatever, we had another 253 that we talked to in either in either a group setting or individual interview setting. And so we tried to pull all that data together. What you'll see in the rest of this document is sort of by group, the themes. We tried to highlight in bold the things that were repeated more than once, but we're going to spend just a couple minutes for you, though you've had probably a chance to look at this, but also for those other people that are watching or listening or here tonight, to talk a little bit about sort of at the high level what we talked about. I want to mention also that once you have your superintendent, we're hoping that this document and this high-level thinking, if you will, can be helpful in the strategic plans that you'll then make with your new superintendent. And hopefully some things in the survey, because it's research-based, might also help you in devising your superintendent evaluation process. With that said, Dr. Collins is going to take you very briefly through the strengths that we noted in our conversations and through the challenges that a new superintendent in Columbus must be up for if they're going to be effective. I'll then come back and review the survey results with you very briefly, and then we'll spend the rest of our time together, however long that is, on the desired characteristics list. So, Dr. Collins?
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, and members of the board. It's indeed a pleasure to be here, and I must say that I thoroughly have enjoyed having an opportunity to interact with your community members as well as the staff here in the district as we receive this information from them. I'm going to start with the strengths of the district that were identified by the different groups we met with. The first is that there is a sense of pride of the accomplishments which have been made in the last few years. Also, there's a belief that there has been increased communication, greater community pride, support, and trust in what the school district is doing. These improved perceptions of the district, they believe, lead directly to the passage of the recent funding levy. Given data issues of the past, there is now increased transparency, accountability, and important student gains in key data, such as graduation rate, and I heard that referenced tonight, so congratulations for that. It's believed that the city is family-friendly and that it's a great place to live, that there is strong business and community support which contribute to a unique community culture, that the school system has adapted to the increasing diversity by providing a wide range of programs and student alternatives, which residents and staff are proud of. Diversity has been identified as a strength. It is a fact that Columbus City Schools is the largest Ohio school system, and also the city's preschool program, which is a collaboration of city and school officials, has been called an unrecognized gem. Improved dual track of college and career readiness was highlighted to provide more opportunities for students. And repeated kudos to Dr. Good, who leaves a legacy for the successor to build and enhance upon. Next, there were a list of opportunities or challenges that the new superintendent would face. To maintain and improve trust and confidence, particularly with minorities. Diversity, while it is a strength, it is also a challenge. It's a challenge because parents and families need increasing levels of support so that their children receive a quality education. Learning gaps and social emotional stresses contribute to discipline and safety issues. Partnerships with businesses, community organizations, city government, church communities need significant further development and enhancement. It is believed that funding will need improvement to handle future shortfalls and the increasing number of students where English is not their first language. A focus on student achievement to reduce and eliminate the achievement gaps between student demographic groups. Staff concerns were expressed around workload and teacher administrative morale, therefore a need to work to collaborate with staff and to empower them to handle district challenges. And finally, a facilities plan is needed to address the negative effects of deferred maintenance, upgrades, building capacity, enrollment trends, and perhaps boundary issues. The need to address facilities was most often mentioned by students, and that is a compilation of the strengths as well as opportunities for the next superintendent.
President Baker, Vice President Cole, and board members, I don't know if we should pause or we should keep going.
Well, are there questions at this point from board members?
Keep going, okay.
All right.
We're trying to be succinct, okay.
Thank you.
Next is the survey. So if you'll turn now to the second document, which is the survey. Basically, you've got two parts. Our survey is research-based, as we've talked about before, and what we try to do on page 3 is highlight the statements that were perceived to be the district's strengths, as well as those areas which there was fairly strong agreement as to terms of what characteristics are necessary. Not surprisingly, in terms of looking at district strengths, there is a range. On page 4, you see the colored dots that show you each different group, the 6 groups that we surveyed. And so there's a bit of a range in those. Obviously, the people that work in the school, the administrators and teachers, see things not unsurprisingly, possibly a little bit better than people that are not in the schools or et cetera. But again, that's hopefully helpful to you in later planning. What I thought was most interesting was the leadership profile results, and on page 5 I would highlight to you, when asked to name their top 4, there was a great deal of unanimity in the top 4 areas that are there. The positive professional climate of mutual trust and respect, recruit, employ, and retain effective personnel, be sensitive to the needs of diverse students, and establish high expectations for all employees. So basically, I made sure that those threads were incorporated into the desired characteristics, again, coming through the survey. Again, I'm trying to be succinct. I'll pause, and then we'll go on to desired characteristics.
Let's move right into it.
Okay, desired characteristics. This, again, is our take. It's deliberately stamped draft. This is our take, which tries to summarize all the threads of all the conversations as well as all the survey data. We've tried to come up with a one-page list based on the conversations I had with you individually. I got a sense, I think, from many or most of you of things that you most cared about and tried to incorporate that there. I'd also point your attention to the bottom, the requirements, if you will, where we've said preferred and where we've not said preferred. Again, trying to establish what I think is the sense of the board, as well as what is helpful in terms of recruiting top candidates. So at this point, I'm most open. When you look at desired characteristics, maybe you see something important that we completely left out. Maybe you think we highlighted something that you don't think is important as some of the other things. Maybe you disagree with some of the things that we put under requirements. If you have that input, again, I'd like to publish this on your website and our website so that candidates can see if they measure up, if you will. And I'd like to make sure that we're relatively in sync with your thinking.
Colleagues, you all had a few days to spend with these documents. Any questions or comments, any feedback? And if you would like some more time, of course, you can communicate directly with Dr. Leese after the meeting if you're not ready to share any feedback. Comments? Board Member Hudson?
Thank you, President Baker. I had just I have two comments. One in the kind of desired characteristics. I didn't see anything lift out lift out in terms of experience with budgeting and planning. Maybe I looked at this earlier.
There's one
and
about facilities and, third from the bottom, can analyze and clearly address funding and facilities needs. That's as close as I would come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why, and that would be, I would suggest, I think, administrative,
Okay.
given the robust budgeting process that we now have in place,
Okay.
budgeting and planning, I think both elements. The second would be, I guess I'm concerned, experience as a school superintendent preferred, at least in my mind, I think that would be required. Perhaps it's, superintendent or deputy superintendent, but I think, if it's a larger district, in my mind, and I think those are comments I have shared with you, but
Sure.
I put that out for board discussion.
The reason I put preferred is that, in my experience, there are some people that have very high-level positions, not necessarily labeled deputy, because organizational charts are so unusual in terms of all of that, though I know the concept you're speaking to. I guess I would see that those people are not as strong a contenders as other people, but I would still personally like you to see those applications and those resumes without them being in effect excluded because they don't meet the criteria. So I tried to keep it a little bit open-ended, send a clear message that you thought superintendent experience was necessary, but I am aware of a couple of candidates that I'm talking to or trying to entice that have some very high-level experience that I think you might want to look at. In the end, that might not be the right person. But that's why my perspective was influencing that a little bit. But I'm to do what you want, not what I want.
I would just say for colleagues, I really feel like, as the largest district in the state, it's important that somebody have this experience under their belt, some experience as superintendent to not be a testing ground. And I know there are programs and there are folks that they may have been a CEO someplace or something, but I think this is a different animal.
Specific comments on that point. Ms. Gibbs?
Sure, I think everyone starts somewhere. And so, and having been in numerous places with superintendents, people who were chief academic officers one year, at the next conference, they are in fact the superintendent the next year. I think the importance is a high-level district professional. So to your point, I've heard all type of titles all across the country. People use all types of charts, but that you have worked in the district, you've been a part of those things that you've talked about, but everyone comes from somewhere, so you're not always a superintendent. And so you are promoted to that from either the chief or a deputy, or some people are called executive directors on the West Coast. I mean, you can come from anywhere. So to me, I would be far more, I think I'll be far more influenced by the experience and where they were, because we are the largest in the state of Ohio, but by no means a large district. So if you have been over all of the high schools, even in Columbus, if you've been over 21 high schools, that's significant. You know a lot rather than a superintendent who had one high school, one middle school, and one elementary. They're just not the same. And so I think it's the quality of the experience that we need to look at for each candidate, as opposed to just saying that would be a mandate, because we want to, everyone has a next step that they ascend from, and we might get the next best person who's just sitting there waiting, and they're going to be the next person. But you have the experience in the urban district, though, I think is far more important.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, I agree with Mary Jo about the importance of success as a school superintendent. I'm not talking about the title, whether it's executive director or CEO or whatever that community may call the person, but it's the person at the top. It's the decision maker. And it's, to me, significantly different, qualitatively different, being the person that actually is responsible for making those decisions and does so, versus knowing lots about the job, but working in a number 2 or 3 or other position. I do agree with what Dr. Lee said with respect to, yeah, there may be some people that we don't want to just automatically screen out at the front end, but I think that this is something that we want to leave either as preferred or strongly preferred, but I think that with room to look at other people, this is a district that I think can, and should command applications and interests from the best and from people that have demonstrated success. This is not a place to be a testing ground. There are small communities everywhere where those things happen. There are a lot of places where it does make sense to look at candidates otherwise. But here, I think that we really want to look at folks that have the successful experience as the leader, and from my perspective, have a doctorate.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the presentation. I'm certainly amenable to looking at the possibility of infinite possibilities. I really like your statement about being able to be open to considering candidates who come with an overwhelming skill set, an intuitive understanding of this work, but may not, for whatever reason, have that exact work as the CEO, superintendent, what have you, but would make a fine candidate for us to look at. I think that creates an open door opportunity for the district. I could be very supportive of strongly preferred, but I think having that preferred status or strongly preferred status is important. Again, I think we should leave ourselves open to the possibility of infinite possibilities to find the best candidate. And sometimes that doesn't come in the way of someone who was the decision maker, so to speak. In terms of the doctorate piece as well, I remember participating in one of those conversations, in fact, several of them, but one particularly where someone thought that the idea of someone having a PhD in this role gave them a better understanding of the data, so to speak, or how to interpret that. And I've had the opportunity to see folks all over the country, just like Board Member Gibbs, who did not have that designation behind them, or maybe even had it in the form of an ED, but even still commanded strong understanding of their school's information and how to yield that to produce better results. So again, I think the preferred status piece is fine, but to me, that's not an end-all, be-all for this position.
Any other comments from board members on that specific point, the preferred experience as a superintendent? Yes, Mr. Peretti.
I just want to remind our colleagues that, this sort of permissive language allows us to look at everyone. And so I think that that's, we're the ones who are going to be seeing the people that are applying. We're going to be able to have those internal discussions, on what we'd like to see. And it's permissive. So, yeah, we're going to, we can talk about, you want to make sure they have experience. But, yes, you're also going to look at Akron City Schools superintendent, didn't come from a traditional background. But that's our job to discuss that. So I don't want us to get bogged down on these points other than that we have these options. They're permissive. And let's just continue moving forward with this process.
Yes, Board Member Reyes.
That's the same thing I was going to say. We can get stuck on semantics, but I wish we could say that we're going to get somebody that has all these recommendations, all these requirements in the back, but that's probably near to impossible. But we may get lucky and have somebody that has all the requirements, but they may have all the requirements from a letter or experience, but maybe they don't have the success rate, and they don't have the accomplishments, and they don't have, those are the things I think that when I attended a lot of the community sessions where people really were most interested in, the closing the achievement gap, having a success rate, working with urban districts, having those things were a little bit higher in most, just like you highlighted in the survey results, that's what I was hearing from the majority of the population. So preferred, strongly preferred, I'm not really too pressed on that. I do recall, though, that there was a strong willingness or a strong preference for this person to live within the district.
Yes.
So I do remember that. I think I went through 3 or 4, and the word strong, strongly preferred, or no other options were the words I heard. That it was important that that person live in the district because we are asking and we're recruiting people to come to our district. So I don't know if we want to, I don't know about willingness, that looks a little, I heard preferred, strongly desired, expected to. I like those words a little bit better than, those are not the words I heard, so.
Board President Baker and Ms. Reyes. Yeah, I did try to highlight to your first point, the track record of documented success in the first bullet, I heard over and over again. The diverse urban and/or large school system experience, there's no preferred on that. That I heard over and over again. I'm probably the person that put willingness there because what I was honestly thinking of, given the time of year, is I wasn't sure if that person had a family, would be moving a family kind of thing. I just was trying to provide a little bit of transition time in terms of that. That's how I came up with willingness. I did understand that was here.
Make sure that eventually they would end up in the district. So, I mean, we're going to give whoever this person is enough time to make their little transition to our district, but eventually the hope is that they would live in our district.
And the willingness to reside in the district is a requirement. So in other words, they have,
So take out the ing-ness and just put will live in.
so we want this individual to be a resident of the district, and that's a requirement? Do we have consensus on that?
Strongly preferred, yes.
A resident of the district is a requirement? Is that?
Mr. Brown?
To what extent, from your experience, does that requirement exclude, what percentage of candidates, how many people would be turned off and not pursue the position by that kind of requirement?
President Baker and Mr. Brown, I honestly don't think many. I mean, most superintendents want to live in the district to begin with, and I mean, because it doesn't send a good message if you don't. So the presumption is that you're going to live in the district, pretty much, et cetera, right from the beginning. So I don't think that's a big problem. I sort of fretted over how to word that, so I'm open to suggestions.
Okay, well,
And I
let's,
just want to make sure with our eyes open and know what that means.
fair question, but let's, yes, Board Member Hudson?
I think we should probably clarify, just again, to keep it all open, but if relocating. So if there's a candidate that was local and their house is, as with Dr. Good, we're not asking a regional candidate to move.
That was a different circumstance.
Are we,
Well,
or
what-
are we not?
It's yes and no. I mean, if I said in that type of example. So we have a regional candidate. So someone that lives in Granville, they're a professor at Denison. and they want to move, they're going to, but they keep their house in Granville. I mean, I just put that out there as an example.
So do we ask them to move? You're suggesting we wouldn't ask them to move?
I just say if relocating, and I think you cross that bridge when we come to it.
All right, I think, yes, Dr. Lees.
President Baker, I was just going to suggest, if I may, I can take the nuss out of there and whatever. Again, what this is about is allowing you to see candidates. I hear you saying we don't want to probably hire anyone who doesn't do this, and that would be part of his or her contract as relates to this. So I don't think you have to decide this issue tonight. I just think it's a matter of sending appropriate signals to candidates that if that's an issue for you or you don't want to move, then this is probably not the job for you. That's what I most want to do.
Board Member Gibbs?
Did you have a comment?
Well, I will just tell you, having that seat before, you definitely want to send the signal, because why would anyone even want to go through the process of applying and then be here and find out you had a different expectation? So I think you need to be clear on what your expectation is.
Right, and that's why we're going through this exercise, because we want to be crystal clear on our requirements. And so it sounds like we want to have a superintendent who lives in the district. And we can wordsmith that, but I think we have consensus on that, unless I'm mistaken.
I don't.
Mr. Brown?
I'm not sure that we want to exclude those candidates, regional or otherwise. We can work with somebody on transition, and that we should leave open. But, and I think sending a signal with the word of willingness or willing to reside here or relocate here, I think that's good. I don't think we need to make it a black and white requirement in this document. But as we go through the process, that's going to be an important question.
All right. I want to hear from Board Member Reyes.
I think we have to use a different word. If we're going to say, to Dr. Good's point, if we're going to say that the expectation is that you eventually move to this district, whether it's 6 months, 1 month, whatever we work out that's feasible, that it's not detrimental to that candidate, then I feel that we need to say that that's the expectation. I worked for an organization where I was asking people to come and join as a recruiter, and I was asking them to buy our products and things like that. How would I look if I don't subscribe to buying the product? To me, I feel that the person does need to be considered to live in this district. So that's so I don't know. I don't think willingness tells somebody that that we're saying that you have the option.
Can we say it is strongly preferred that the person who is selected for this position will live in the district?
That was
Preferred, required. I think required is the correct word.
All right, so I want, Mr. Brown, please.
What if we said the board expects the successful candidate to relocate to the district?
That is fine.
I like the sound of that.
Same thing.
That is fine.
Board Member Gibbs?
My comment isn't on this one, so if you
Okay,
have any
all
other
right.
comments on this,
All right,
you can dispose of it.
have we resolved that particular item? Did you get that?
Yeah, board member, yes, the candidate is expected, the successful candidate is expected to live in the district, is what I heard, correct?
That's what I heard.
And I've heard to beef up the budgeting and planning wording.
Yes.
Those are the two things I have at this point, if I'm on track.
All right, now, did we resolve the experience as a school superintendent? Oh,
My understanding is I'm leaving it as it is for the moment.
give us just a moment. Mr. Treasurer?
Can I make a suggestion that you check with legal counsel on your residency statement, please? When you get the chance?
Yes, we'll review with legal counsel all of these items before.
Because
anything is posted.
this has been a topic before in many districts. And so I think there's a difference between we would like you to versus we require you to. I just want to make sure you're on good legal footing with that.
Okay, very good. So, Mr. Peretti?
We are not like voting on this document. So I think that, this is very good dialogue that we're having. I don't, I think we're making really good points what the board is desiring. But, we do have time to, internally to continue working on this without, worrying about like specific legal language. But I do think that we've been pretty clear about what we're trying to express. So I just want to, put that out there as we wordsmith at the board table and to be careful with that.
All right, so we're obviously not voting on this evening, and we won't vote on this particular document. However, it will be posted, and this is what people will look at who are candidates. And so it is critically important that we make our expectations known so that we don't waste anyone's time. Board Member Gibbs.
Thank you. Are we done with that? So I have 3 points just to bring up. One, I just want to echo my colleague sentiments. There is a lot of the language that says, you've worked with this, you work with that, as opposed to you can demonstrate. You can work on a lot of stuff and still get an F. Demonstrate to me that you've been successful and be able to provide evidence of success. So I can work with you all day long and still not have positive outcomes. So I want to make sure.
Your feedback.
I'm from the hood. Don't walk up on me like that. Thank you, JC. Thank you, JC. To make sure, so for example, you have, it was one about the students, and I just, because we say you have demonstrated success working with business, but when we talk about the students, it says you support a wide variety of student programming. I would like to say, I want to see that you've demonstrate to us that you've introduced programming, or that you've had a successful movement in student voice, just in those ways where you can increase it to say, to show demonstration. That's one. The second one is, to your point earlier, Dr. Good, our district is 77% of students of color. Is that correct?
Non-white.
Non-white.
Yeah.
So non-white. However, the last bullet is able to work effectively with low-income and culturally diverse families. I'd like that one to be moved up, and I would like that to be a bit more quantifiable. So what do we mean when we say you've worked with low-income families? What exactly does that mean? How would we quantify that if we were measuring one candidate over the other? Everybody went to an event, that doesn't count. So I just want to make sure, and this is a conversation for our colleagues, to make sure we are saying, when you say you've worked with low income and you've worked with culturally diverse, I know that that's a good catch-all, but I want something that says students of color, and what have you done particularly to close achievement gaps among students of color? That is what the reality of our district work is. And so if we're not speaking directly to our district work, I don't think we'll be able to really measure one against the other. That's open for colleagues. I want to hear where my colleagues are with that, but one, that cannot be the last bullet. That needs to be higher in the profile, because that is the profile of our district. And secondly, how do we make that a more quantifiable or a better profile statement, so that we are in fact getting some data, or they'll be able to present to us that they are successful in that measure.
I think that's up to screening. I think that's something that we need to share with you all when you're screening, you're talking, because I think if you start putting numbers or quantifiable things on characteristics, it makes it a little difficult. But so anytime you do a job description, or you're looking for a candidate, and you have these 15, 20 things that you say that you prefer, that you like, that you desire, that you expect, at the end of the day, when you have your recruiter, that recruiter needs to let them know that, I think there's questions that they will ask that is our preference. I think it's good for us to mention that to them, but I don't know, I mean, you can tell me different, but usually I think your point to demonstrated, proven, record, those words, that things are more important than, you know, you have to have been in a district of 25 or 30% or 40%. And I don't think you're saying that.
Yeah, I'm not asking for numbers. I'm sorry, I'm not asking for numbers. To clarify my point, I'm not asking for numbers or a percentage. I just want this part of the profile to be strengthened and to reflect the characteristics we want in more specific areas than say, oh, I've worked with low-income people. I mean, demonstrated, you know, you've been able to motivate, inspire, or move the group. I mean, something more than just, oh, I've worked with them, and it's too low in the list. Mary Jo had her hand up.
And I would say, and then I'll go on, I would say we could probably be here all night wordsmithing this document, and I know no one sitting in this room would like to do that. And so what I'd like to do is ask if there are any really important final additional comments. And then what I'd like to do is ask all of you to share with J.C. Benton any additional comments that you have, and then we can have this document recast by Dr. Lease and run past us again for additional review. So we're looking for sort of any last sort of final comments that you want to say here at the table this evening. And I do believe that Ms. Hudson, okay, very good.
It wasn't important.
I'm sure it was. Okay.
I
And
like
then,
that plan.
yes, Mr. Vice President, you did have,
I defer as well. My suggestion was going to be just that.
okay, very good. And Mr. Brown, I think you were next, and then Ms. Gibbs.
Briefly, most of it I'll defer, but in terms of the order of these, I think a statement at the top that says that order has no significance makes lots more sense, because once we start playing around with, you know, what comes above what and what's that meaning, I think we're lost. So,
Ms. Gibbs.
I appreciate that, but I assert that needs to be higher in the list, because while it may not mean anything and we put that statement up there, the way people read it is the order, what's most important is first. And while we may think it one way, I don't feel comfortable to lead a board in a district of this side and its magnitude, and that's the last thing we mention. That we want, and I will defer, but I will say this is one of the most important things we have to do, which is send the signal to the next person that is considering to lead this district. We are going to yield for the sake of time, but it does not yield the importance of making sure we're in consensus. And I appreciate all my board colleagues' input, because we can only have this conversation at this table for us all to hear from each other. And I learned so much from each and every one of you, but I assert that that is very important, and that if we don't value it by putting it up top, then I don't know that it signals that everybody values it. So that is very important to me. And I would also like to echo, as you come back to it, that I think 3 or 4 more bullets about budgeting and finance and understanding complex funding systems and being able to inspire and influence state lawmakers around equitable funding, somehow that has to make its way in there as well.
Good point. Thank you. And final word then to the Vice President.
Yes, I just wanted to reassert again the importance of having demonstrated or proven in relevant areas of the language. To my sister colleague's argument about is able to work effectively with low-income and culturally diverse families, I think it'd be a wonderful bullet point right under the very first one, which state has a strong instructional background and track record of documented success in improving student achievement, both overall and across student subgroups, including the ability to reduce or eliminate achievement gaps. This language is very, very clear about what expectation is in terms of student achievement, but I think a great foundation of that would be the very last bullet that says proven ability to effectively work with low-income and culturally diverse families. So where we can make it appropriate to have proven or demonstrated, I think would be helpful in any of these categories. But if we could move that bottom bullet to the second, just as a kind of buttress foundation to this very first bullet, I think it'd be clarified.
One last final.
Without further ado, I apologize.
Ms. Gibbs?
And to add a catch-all phrase, because we call out low-income and culturally diverse, we don't say anything about students with disabilities and/or gifted. So if we're going to call them out, call out subgroups, and you can name them or not name them, but specifically, we can't let students with disability be invisible in our superior COGS and high-performing gifted. So laying out the groups, was that it?
Board Member Reyes.
The only suggestion I can say, so I guess what we're saying is, even though this is not the job description, we would want it to look like a job description, to Mrs. Gibbs' point. When we do a job description for any job, it's always the top big requirements at the very top and then at the bottom. And I think that would be prudent for us board members to let you all know what those bullet points that are very important, that should be at the top. So I'll make sure that maybe that's a direction that we need to ensure we give feedback. If there was a numbering system on these bullets, which we can easily just put 1 through whatever this is, and then tell them bullet 5 is important, bullet 6 is important, number 8, and we can help them with that decision.
Thank you, everyone. All right, so today's Wednesday, so I would like to ask that all of my colleagues provide any additional feedback to J.C. Benton by close of business on Friday. And that will give Dr. Lee something to do this weekend. And then we'll look to have something back from you early next week. Does that meet with everyone's?
I do want to get this posted and
Yes.
that kind of thing. And I think many of the comments I hear are easy to incorporate. I think you made some good suggestions. So I'll wait to see what you say, and then I'll try to take a stab at also reflecting as many comments as I can.
Very good, very good. I appreciate it. Is there anything else you would like to
No,
share
sir.
with the board?
That's
Okay.
it. Thank you very
Dr.
much.
Leese, Dr. Collins, thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for your presentation and your ongoing service to the district. Before we vote on our consent agenda, I would like to ask Board Member Brown, who's the chair of our Policy Review Committee, to provide a brief first reading of the omnibus amendment to board policy that we will be contemplating as a first reading, no vote this evening. Mr. Brown?
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you also for helping get this committee together and established, and we did come together very quickly. We've had 2 meetings already and worked through a number of policies, and I am very, very pleased with the makeup of the committee. We've got a really good group, and as we worked through this first couple of batches, that became very clear. What we have here is a first reading of what we've done so far. It's an omnibus amendment modifying policies. For the most part, what's here is catch-up of changes that have been recommended because of changes in law, either at the state or federal level, and are necessary, and it's just a matter of updating the policies. All of these are policies that were already reviewed and recommended to PRC by the administrative group, and they were very carefully and thoroughly vetted and considered. There are policies, for example, that cover healthcare plans. Obviously, there have been changes in law that require that, the use of EpiPens in the buildings. There's also some rearranging of things simply to divide policy components a little bit differently because employees, some are evaluated differently than others, and it was easier to separate those out. And there is a policy that was simply skipped in the original transition to Neola that had to do with study and performance of music of a religious orientation. The committee went back and took a close look at what the policy was before. That previous policy had been a product of negotiation at one time in the past with the ACLU, and everybody agreed that it's a pretty good policy and we should simply readopt it. The board has a complete list of all of those policies marked up showing the changes, And you've also got a synopsis of those policies. And I want to thank also Eric Roush for being extremely helpful in staffing the committee and in putting some of this together. So with that, I think we've had our first reading, and if anybody has questions, I'm happy to address those.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown, and thanks again. I'll echo that to Dr. Roush for providing this executive summary. There are quite a number of policies here, and the executive summary makes it easy to understand the updates and the changes. And kudos to the committee for moving so rapidly. They've had 2 meetings already under Mr. Brown's leadership, so thank you very much for that. This does constitute our first reading, so this will come back before the board, probably at our next meeting. We'll be able to have further discussion, and we'll vote on it at that time. If there are questions, Board Member Gibbs.
Yeah, there are questions on this one. So under the religious music policy, under policy 200, is this what this is? 2000, study and performance of music and religion origin. It talks about being able to study all types of music in the academic sense, but the last sentence says, because the performance of vocal music containing religious lyrics at commencement exercises may distract from this purpose and be inconsistent with criteria mandated by this policy, it shall not be performed at graduation. So no gospel choirs can perform at graduations. Is that the way this policy is being interpreted?
Well, I might ask General Counsel.
President Baker, Board Member Gibbs, members of the board, this policy actually has its genesis going back about 15 years in litigation that was brought against the district by the American Civil Liberties Union. And as a settlement, the board conducted hearings and adopted this policy. And it was our view at the time that that restriction was legally required under the First Amendment. And it does not prohibit a gospel choir from performing music that, I mean, maybe this is contradictory, but basically what it says is you can't perform music with religious lyrics at commencement. That was the circumstance in which the lawsuit was brought, and we think that this language is consistent with case law interpreting the First Amendment, that the district runs the risk of violating the First Amendment if it would allow at a graduation ceremony, as opposed to in other settings, the performance of music with religious lyrics.
So why would either setting be an issue?
It really talks about 2 settings, and I know you have a lot still on your plate, but to sort of fully answer the question, it speaks largely about how music is selected for use in the classroom and sets various criteria and allows, in that setting, music with religious lyrics along with various religions and cultures, as well as other types of music, so that students learn about all forms of music. It also allows it in competitions. There's that language in there. In this particular setting now, when very little music is performed and where if that music was offensive to someone, they would have to either stay there and listen to it or skip the graduation ceremony. The cases would suggest that in that setting, that allowing performance of music with religious lyrics would violate the separation of church and state under the First Amendment.
So did you do research? You did research, and you can answer this particular policy, and found that that is in fact a revised code, or it was a mutual understanding, we got something in writing? I mean, it is in fact the case law?
It was
Okay.
part of a settlement which reflects legal opinions that interpret the First Amendment.
My question is that, and you can, could you forward that to us just for edification to read when you find it? Not now, but when you find it, can you send it to us? And my question is, we now have we had a great presentation from one of our high schools that is based in African American culture, where they sing spirituals. And so they wouldn't be able to then do that as a part of their graduation.
The graduation ceremony itself, in that limited setting, the policy says no.
All right, so I think then, Board Member Hudson. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, President Baker, and respectfully, Board Member Gibbs, I think these are some significant First Amendment issues, and I think given our culturally diverse student body, I think it's respectful, it's limited, it's tailored, just a commencement. And, you know, we could talk about it, it probably should be even broader. So I would say, and I think to ask General Counsel, who has a small staff and small office, to provide us with, you know, the case law, et cetera. I don't plan to read that. I'm going to take his word for it. That is pretty well-established jurisprudence. So I just think this is the policy seems narrowly tailored, and given the precedent, we should probably stick with it.
And Mr. Brown.
You know, although I am clearly not the board's counsel, nor do I want that role, this is an area that I have spent a great deal of time with, both as a lawyer, school board member for 15 years up in the Cleveland area, but also subsequent to that. And it's an area that is well-developed, and this is where I think we need to be for a variety of reasons. The law does support this path. And the other factor in all of this is that, you know, for what it's worth, is that all of this was sent out to everybody well in advance, and I didn't hear anything prior to tonight at the table. But if there are further questions, you know, certainly there's an opportunity for that before the policies are adopted. Frankly, and I'm not going to speak for Larry, but I'm not sure what it is that he could send out, you know, except for a copy of Amendment 1 to the United States Constitution itself. And, you know, this is based on lots of law and interpretation, and in our case, specifically based on a well-developed comprehensive agreement with those challenging precisely the practice that you're asking about, and has served this community well for all the years since, including, to the best of my knowledge, during the period between when it was perhaps inadvertently left out when we adopted the Neola policies and today. So.
Mr. Brown, this had been our policy previously, and then during one of our recent updates, it was accidentally omitted. And also keeping in mind that this is a first reading, and so we'll have additional opportunity to discuss between now and the next meeting, and then also to discuss at the next meeting. Board Member Gibbs.
So the point is that at the first reading is when we have the opportunity to discuss it. So I'm glad you did send it out, and I appreciate that. And as you say, there's so much based on case law, so there should be something that, in fact, you could send. So I just want to read it so I'll be able to explain it to my constituents. And I want to be able to fully understand the laws that it is based on for whatever reason, so that I can fully explain with the understanding of what it is. So while we are still saying First Amendment is not just prohibitive, it's also permissive. So if students want to do it, we have to be able to explain to them as well as to the parents who may not want to hear it. So I need to know fully what the law says, and if some things are law or some things are agreement, as you have alluded to. So you can send that to me in the, you know, in between now and the next reading, and I will look forward to reading it. And I just want to make sure we understand that music is such a great part of what we do, and we just want to make sure that that part is fully understood, and that students are able to express themselves in all ways possible. And if they cannot do it at graduation, then understanding what are all the rights involved here too.
Thank you.
President Baker, respectfully.
Board Member Hudson, I do apologize. Vice President had his hand up previously, so we'll come right to you, Mr. Vice President.
I just wanted to quickly get an idea as if to whether there's caveat opportunity here. Particularly, there's a portion that does, and I remember this because we discussed it at this first meeting. There's a portion that talks about, in sections 1 through 7, the classroom and pedagogical approach and diversity acceptance of religious and other material in a concert setting and in a classroom setting. If there were a graduation ceremony that said it was a graduation and concert, is there a caveat kind of opportunity to still be able to include that religious portion if it was something that was concert/graduation based? It's just a question, and nothing that has to be answered now, but something that I would love it if we got back, once you get back to us with other legal precedent, that would be wonderful just to know for me.
Yes. Board Member Hudson.
I will forcefully suggest this board has no business asking for, I think it is ridiculous, especially with this longtime precedent, that we're asking for this in-depth First Amendment legal analysis and trying to cut corners on what is a respectful and narrowly tailored policy. You know, we have folks in this community and in our district that are of all types of religions. And I personally do not want this policy to go any broader. We need to respect everyone has of all types of religions. And so if there's one type of music that's played and it doesn't recognize other religions, that's a problem for a ceremony that is for all students. And you either graduate or you have one shot. But I think to ask council to provide this, that is a hugely burdensome request that I think is for a policy that, and a consent order that we've been in for 15 years, it is wholly unreasonable. I think without board consensus on that delivery, I would respectfully ask that we do not make that ask of our general counsel.
Thank you, Board Member Hudson. I do believe Mr. Cole was next.
Thank you. Once again, here's an opportunity for us to not deliver on our constituents and even our children an insufficient funds check when it comes to respecting their diversity. First and foremost, it's important to know that there's a reason, a cultural reason, why a few of us at the table are concerned about this policy and creating a broad opportunity for student expression, whether they are from Somalia, whether they are from Bhutan, whether they're from France, whether they're from any nation state in Africa. Here we have an opportunity to allow students the ability to express their creativeness, and if the principal, if that student body were amenable to that during a graduation ceremony that was incorporated into a concert or a concert incorporated into a ceremony, here's the opportunity to do that. This is a show of respect for every student and every person in the district. For me, it is not about just Baptist or Christian, it's about giving everybody the opportunity to be able to express that in a certain setting if there were legal grounds to be able to do it. I don't think it's unreasonable at all for us to ask if we can get some clarity on what our parameters are, what the box we have to work in is. I think it's very important, and I think it shows an incredible sensitivity and sensibility to a student body and to a diverse employee base that we care about these issues. I would really love it. I think it would be profound and greatly mature of us if we use better language than to say something is ridiculous, to say something is absurd, to say these things in public forum in a way that disrespects other people. The whole point here, we just approve policies for that show diversity, that show our care about it. We just got a presentation about a superintendent search where we want to see a superintendent, a person just like this man sitting here, who values these things. We cannot come up insufficient funds to our constituency on this matter. It's important. It's a minor thing. That's why we pay you the big bucks and why you're on fries. I mean, and to speak colloquially, that's why. So that you can give us this information and then we can get it and make the best decision, because we know the facts, we know right from wrong, and we know the value of what we're willing to gain or lose in our final proposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Board Member Gibbs.
Yes, so finally, again, to clarify what I ask, regardless, I am a board member of the Columbus Board of Education. We are about to pass a policy. We are at the first reading. I'm asking for more information about the policy we are about to pass. I don't think it's in our policies that says you cannot fail to be informed fully about the issues that you'd like us to vote on for passage. So I'm not asking for you to present Brown versus Board. Just if you have a paper, whatever you had in your committee, if you can send an article a sister's way, send something, and it will satisfy. I'm not asking you to do a white paper. Just send some information. My study was on the site for the American Society for Music Educators. They have an entire position paper around religious music. I read that. I'm just asking, whatever you're citing, just send an article. It doesn't have to be in depth. Just a quick summary will suffice to have better understanding of the policy. So what I am saying and what other people are hearing are two different things. So my request, Board President, is to provide into my committee chair for policy to just cite or provide a quick summary of where we can go for more resources and information. As a board member, I don't have to take anybody's word for it. Not when answers are available. I don't need to guess if there's data. So provide the data, and then that will help us make an informed decision. It will help inform my decision, and will help me be a better, more informed board member so I can pass a policy. To that, I thank all of you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Mr. Brown?
I think Mary Jo still had something, or maybe not. No, okay. The only additional thing, and I will see if there's something that I have already looked at or probably have in my computer that I can share with you. But the point that I wanted to make is not specific to the policy. It's the notion that individual board members can direct requests to somebody on the staff, like Larry. Larry works for the superintendent, and individual board members can't do that. Only the board as a whole can do that. And I'm not there with directing our council to spend research time to put something together.
Brown, so my commitment to my colleagues is that I will work with the committee chair and whoever maybe in the administration may be willing to work with us to put something together that I think will provide the additional information that I think my colleagues want to see, so that they can make the best informed decision when we do vote on these policies subsequent to tonight's meeting. Any other questions or comments on the first reading of these policies? All right, very good. Thank you. I appreciate that rich discussion, colleagues. Let's then move on to voting on our consent agenda. So the chair will now entertain a motion that we adopt the consent agenda as it's presented.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Comments, questions on any piece of legislation contained within the consent agenda this evening, colleagues? Board Member Gibbs.
I'd like to thank all of the members of the community for the donations, especially the cool collection of guitars that we are about to get from the Kramer family. and they have like a Concord Mark 20. They have, I mean, I looked some of these up. There's some pretty cool guitars. So to the family of Phyllis Kramer and her late husband and his collection of guitars that will now bless our students, and hopefully they can rock on because of their donation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for pointing that out, Board Member Gibbs. If there's nothing else from the board related to the consent agenda, Mr. Treasurer, please call the roll.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you very much. Let's move on then to announcements. And let me start by announcing what you all already know, and that is that our 3 incumbent members were reelected. And so congratulations, and looking forward to continuing to work with you on the Columbus Board of Education. Thank you very much. And then, are there any, yes, I think Board Member Reyes was next.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to talk real briefly about November 2nd. We celebrated, members of our community celebrated Latino Equal Pay Day. Just want to recognize that that date is the 22 months that a Latina would have to work to equal the 12 months of pay for a male. So we basically make 54 cents for every dollar that a man makes, and for African American women, it's 63 cents. So it was a great experience with the Y. We had members, Latina members from throughout the city, and we also had a couple of students. We didn't have a lot of students because it was in the morning, but we did share this information with members of mentoring, Latina mentoring programs, and it's something that's new to this community. The Latino population continues to grow, so I just wanted to kind of highlight that opportunity, and that if anyone needs more information, it was widely covered by the local media. Secondly, that evening, I was honored to speak to the new inductees of the National Honor Society at Berwick. So, not Berwick, Brookhaven, I apologize. And for the Global, at Brookhaven for Global Academy. Too many schools. And just want to congratulate them. I congratulated them that evening, and just how determined they are to reach to this next level. Whether they were a junior or whether they were a senior, they knew exactly what they wanted to do, which is more than probably some of us knew at that same time. So just want to congratulate them for their new induction.
Thank you, Board Member Reyes. Ms. Gibbs?
Yes. Definitely want to give a shout out and a big congratulations to the Special Olympics Department, which held the inaugural Special Olympics basketball game, Beechcroft versus Northland, which featured 2 of the basketball teams and some exceptional athletes. It was a fundraiser, and I'm looking at Ms. Leffler. I want to say the check they gave to Special Olympics was over $1,000. Board Member Cole kicked it off, and I closed it out. And it was just electric. Elementary students came over to view the game. Dr. Good came through, but to see our Special Olympics, the entire organization really be supported, and those students be front and center for both of the high schools to see has been really tremendous. We were at a conference, and they talked about making sure that your students with disabilities don't become the invisibles. And this was clearly one of the activities that they continue to do to help our students stay out front and to feel supported and loved. So thank you to everyone that made that possible, and congratulations to all of the students that participated.
Thank you. Mr. Peretti, I think you were next.
I just wanted to say that Finance and Appropriations will be meeting next Thursday, and correct me if I'm wrong, we will be having a presentation from the city on tax incentives. Okay? study, and as well as our monthly financial forecast. And looking forward to December, in the next few months, Mr. Oldham, at our facilities operating budget, as well as discussing our opportunity study for the Treasurer's Office in the future. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Vice President?
Thank you. Just very quickly, I did attend the Special Olympics game. I thought it was beautiful and outstanding. Just to see the number of very athletically gifted students and the passion, most importantly, the passion that our other students had for our Special Olympics athletes. It was amazing. It was a really blessed experience. I also want to give an opportunity to shout out Mr. Oldham and other district staff who had the opportunity to attend the Ohio MBE luncheon, where we had staff acknowledged, and more importantly, we had students present. One who's an alumni of Columbus City Schools, East High, currently a student attending the Ohio State University as a track athlete and a business person. Asa is, I mean, just the amazing presence that we have, and again, the show of commitment and fidelity on our part to ensuring that we advance students to college, to the military, to small business entrepreneurship, and so on and so forth. Just want to make sure I acknowledge your staff and the great work that we're doing to try and work to strengthen LEDE programming here in the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Anybody else? I would like to, and I think we have a photo we can put up. We're ready to put that photo up. So on October 25th at the Columbus Metropolitan Club, the superintendent did speak. A number of us were there. And I don't want to say that this was his swan song or his goodbye at CMC, but I guess it kind of was. And so very good Q&A session. And he received a couple standing ovations, as I recall. So I just wanted to, as we begin to look forward to the end of your service here, I just want to begin to celebrate that, your service here. And this was a good way that we did that at CMC. So I wanted to acknowledge you and thank you, and look forward to the next couple months with you. So that's just a picture of some of us who were there that day. The next thing I wanted to talk about very briefly is something else that we have coming up, and that's the Family Literacy and Numeracy Academy, and that is December 9th at COSI at 9 a.m. And so I don't know if we have anybody here who might like to speak about that, but just plan to be there. I know I do. Any other announcements from board members before we go to the superintendent, Ms. Gibbs?
Yes, hoping all of the board members avail themselves of the professional development available at the Capitol Conference, sponsored by the Ohio School Board Association. It starts on this Sunday and it goes to Tuesday. It is a shortened conference, but our own Cherie Wells and Dr. John Stanford will be presenting on Monday around around our processes around innovative programming for our high schools, and there will be others featured throughout the week. So I hope you take advantage of that. And I also know that I Know I Can is hosting a program this Saturday, if I'm right. If you could speak to that for the high school seniors.
Thank you, President Baker. To Board Member Gibbs, this Saturday from 9 to 1, in collaboration with I Know I Can, Columbus City Schools is hosting their second district-wide scholarship application workshop. And there'll be representatives there, of course, from I Know I Can, Columbus Foundation, United Negro College Fund, and representatives from University of Toledo, and an HBCU room for those students that are interested in applying for scholarships for HBCUs. That's Saturday at East High School from 9 to 1.
If there's nothing else, Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board. It's a pleasure for me to introduce your newest administrator. Was formerly an office automated coordinator, and through your action this evening is promoted to supervisor at Central Enrollment. Michael Taylor. Michael, would you please stand? When we talk about the dream team, he's in a row of dream team. Tanya Freeman is the supervisor there, Fleshay Lyons, an executive director, and of course our own Dr. Mayshell Klein and Dr. Roush there, all of whom have had roles and continue to have roles in central enrollment. So thank you for your leadership. I am so excited. Maybe I'll come back in January for the ribbon cutting at the new Central Enrollment Center. It is stunning, stunning. What a wonderful, wonderful way to welcome new families to our district. And I know it's been such an inconvenience for you and your staff, but the result is going to be truly a beautiful way to welcome people to Columbus City Schools. Thank you for your patience and your service.
That's great, and thank you for sitting through the whole meeting so far, too. That says a lot. If there's nothing else for the good of the order this evening, I'm going to ask the Vice President to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is recommended that the board recess into executive session per section 121.22 G1 Ohio Revised Code to consider the employment or compensation of public employees or officials, and 121.22 G3 Ohio Revised Code to confer with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti? Yes. Ms. Reyes?
Thank you.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. The board will now recess into executive session. We will adjourn from there without returning here. Have a good night. Thank you.